I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Is Kevin McCarthy the weakest Speaker of the House in United States House of Representatives history on his way out? Will the other MAGA Republicans vote to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House? I want us all to pay attention to this point over the coming weeks and months, because I predict a motion to vacate, in other words, a motion to remove Kevin McCarthy from his position, is foreseeable to happen in the future. And what am I basing this on? Well, there's been lots of rumblings that the MAGA Republicans have been very upset at the way Kevin McCarthy has been handling these debt ceiling negotiations, or should I say lack thereof. And Kevin McCarthy has been blaming the other MAGA Republicans for the way they've been handling the debt ceiling negotiations. And so there's this huge amount of infighting. It culminated in this New York Times story from last week. And the New York Times story last week had the headline, "Staring Down a Debt Crisis, McCarthy Toils to Navigate GOP Divisions. The House Speaker has little trust in his Budget Committee chairman or his number two as he works to unite the fractious Republican majority around a spending plan." And in this New York Times article, there are numerous sources around Kevin McCarthy that basically say that Kevin McCarthy has no trust in Majority Leader Steve Scalise, the MAGA Republican Majority Leader, and basically that Kevin McCarthy thinks that the MAGA Republican Budget Chair Jody Arrington, a MAGA Republican Congress member from Texas, is a total idiot. And this private infighting essentially went public in this New York Times article, where all of these sources around Kevin McCarthy pointed fingers at them for their failure to deliver a counter budget or to articulate what these spending cuts would be to try to address their negotiations with President Biden's budget that he presented months ago at this point. And so this infighting, I think, is going to lead to a motion to vacate. And remember, when Kevin McCarthy finally won after, 14 or 15 votes before he became Speaker of the House, one of the things he agreed to is that all it would take is one member of the MAGA Republicans to vote to oust him, and an entire vote would be taken to remove him. So let's just give you some of the history here of what's led to this and why I think this is likely to be the outcome. So just so you know, in the past, a clean debt ceiling bill has always been provided, whichever party has been in control of the House of Representatives, which controls spending. So despite the Democrats completely disagreeing with Donald Trump's spending priorities, the Democrats under the Trump administration put forward a clean debt ceiling bill. When I say a clean debt ceiling bill, what I mean is that there aren't any preconditions to raise the debt ceiling. And remember, when we're talking about raising the debt ceiling, we're talking about raising the debt ceiling so that the government is able to pay its bills that were incurred under prior administrations, under prior terms of Congress. It is not forward-looking when we talk about raising the debt ceiling. There is this debt that has been accrued over a period of time, that has accumulated over a period of time based on the spending, in this case, of Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump accounts for more than 25% of all of the debt in United States history that we have to address. So you have to raise the debt ceiling in order to pay the debt that was incurred under the Trump administration, essentially. And you have to pass a bill to do that, and that originates in the House of Representatives. And so in the past, the House of Representatives has always put forward a clean debt debt ceiling bill. Why? Because if America defaults on its debt, it would be catastrophic for our country. We would default on our full faith and credit. Our credit would be downgraded. We would go into an instant recession and perhaps worse. So no one messes around with the debt ceiling. You raise the debt ceiling. The very fact that you have these debt ceiling requirements in the first place, that you have to get approval, is ridiculous. But nonetheless, that's been the law of the land for a significant period of time, right? So on January 19th, 2023, you have Janet Yellen, the Secretary of the Treasury. She writes a letter to Kevin McCarthy, and she explains, look, at this point, the government is going to take extraordinary measures at this point, given the fact that you've not put forward a clean debt ceiling bill that will last through Monday, June 5th, 2023. What she says in the letter is the following. I write to keep you apprised of actions the Treasury Department is taking in regard to the debt limit. In my letter, January 13, 2023, I noted that Public Law 117-73 increased the statutory debt limit to a level of $31.381 trillion and informed you that beginning on January 19th, the outstanding debt of the United States was projected to reach the statutory limit. This letter serves to notify you, pursuant to the United States Code, of the extraordinary measures the Treasury began using today, as of January 19, 2023. First, I have determined that by reason of the statutory debt limit, I will be unable to fully invest the portion of the Civil Service Retirement and Disability Fund not immediately required to pay beneficiaries, and that a debt issuance suspension period will begin on Thursday, January 19, 2023, and last through Monday, June 5, 2023. My predecessors have declared debt issuance suspension periods under similar circumstances. With these determinations, the Treasury Department will suspend additional investments of the amounts credited and redeem a portion of the investment held by the CSRDF as expressly authorized by law. In addition, because of the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act of 2006 provides that investments in postal service retiree health benefits shall be made in the same manner of these other investments. Treasury will suspend additional investments there. They will be made whole once the debt limit is increased. As I stated in my January 13th letter, the period of time that extraordinary measures may last is subject to considerable uncertainty, including the challenges of forecasting the payments and receipts of U.S. government months into the future. I respectfully urge Congress to act promptly and protect the full faith and credit of the United States. So in other words, we're taking extraordinary measures that could run out by this summer. You need to do something about it. So Kevin McCarthy then meets with President Biden on February 1st, 2023. And Biden says, look, I'm going to show you my budget. You show me your budget. And then Kevin McCarthy is asked as he leaves the White House, well, what spending cuts are you going to make? You claim that you're not going to pass a clean debt ceiling bill, which is unprecedented. Okay, so what is it that you want to cut? When will you show your budget? Kevin McCarthy says, I'm not going to negotiate in public. Here, play this clip.
Where should those budget cuts come from right now? Medicare and Social Security, the White House insists Republicans want to cut. What cuts do you want?
Well, let me be clear about that, and I've been clear many times. No, we're not talking about that. And to really be able to do this right, I'm not going to negotiate this in the press, right? I respect the conversation we had together, and we will continue that.
And then Kevin McCarthy then gives a press conference in the House of Representatives in the Capitol building, where he says, and this is very unprecedented, he goes, we will not pass a clean debt ceiling here without some form of spending reform. So there will never be a clean one. Here, play this clip of Kevin McCarthy.
When the White House said that the president's open to talking about the debt ceiling and a separate discussion about ways to control spending, I mean, what do you think about when you hear that they kind of want to separate those two, is what they say?
Whichever way they want to talk about it, I'm very clear. We will not pass a clean debt ceiling here without some form of spending reform. So there'll never be a clean one. I don't know how they want to say it, that's fine. But at the end of the day, we're going to get spending reforms. I believe you have to lift the debt ceiling. But you do not lift the debt ceiling without changing your behavior. So It's got to be both. Yes, sir.
Some of your own members.
Okay, so now let's talk about the MAGA Republican infighting here. So Kevin McCarthy believed, I suppose, that these individuals who were his essentially number two, Steve Scalise, and his budget chair, Jody Arrington, these MAGA Republicans, like, were going to give him information because Biden presented his budget and he's like, okay, show me your budget. And the budget chair, Jody Arrington's done like nothing. And then Jody Arrington was like, I've got a term sheet. And then Kevin McCarthy was like, what term sheet are you talking about? I've never seen this term sheet. So he called Arrington out for talking about some budget term sheet that McCarthy's never seen. McCarthy has no confidence in Arrington and thinks Arrington can't put together a budget. And meanwhile, McCarthy has no confidence in Steve Scalise, the majority leader. And so McCarthy's people, in essence, were leaking to the New York Times all of these things about Scalise and Arrington being incompetent. And by the way, McCarthy in the New York Times article doesn't even deny or reject these criticisms about Scalise and Arrington. One of the other facts to note about Arrington wanted to back Scalise to challenge Kevin McCarthy for Speaker of the House, which Kevin McCarthy clearly did not forget that as well. And so here from the New York Times, here are some of the things that are being reported by sources close to Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy has told colleagues he has no confidence in Mr. Arrington, the man responsible for delivering a budget framework laying out the spending cuts that Republicans have said they will demand in exchange for any move to increase the debt limit. And then it says, aside from the perceived disloyalty, Mr. McCarthy regards Mr. Arrington, a former official in the George W. Bush administration, as incompetent, according to more than half a dozen people familiar with his thinking who spoke on a condition of anonymity to describe private conversations. The tension has burst into public view, contributing to confusion and mixed messages from Republican leaders about what their plan is and when they might be able to share it. Then it goes into this idea where Arrington told reporters he was preparing a term sheet, and then McCarthy said, what in the world are you talking about? And then the article goes on to say that McCarthy has told colleagues and allies he cannot rely on Mr. Scalise, describing Scalise as ineffective, checked out, and reluctant to take a position on anything at all. And then let's go back to, this is a statement from Chuck Schumer, and this is what Chuck Schumer had stated on this week on ABC. He's basically said about McCarthy, he said this back in February. He says, okay, McCarthy's saying he wants to attach spending cuts. Show us the spending cuts. Show it to us. Play this clip.
Now, McCarthy says he wants to attach certain spending cuts to do this. Where is your plan, Mr. McCarthy? He says he wants cuts. We ask him which ones. He won't say any. Is it Social Security and Medicare? That would hurt the American people.
He says it won't be.
He says it won't, but a lot of other people in his caucus still say it will. Will it be police? Will it be the military? His job, we have a plan. Do it clean as we've done it 4 times. 3 under Trump, once under Biden. He will not even say what he wants to cut, and I'll tell you why. He can't pass a plan with cuts. His hard right will demand the kind of deepest cuts that his more mainstream Republicans won't vote for. And I'll tell you, my experience in this, the party that holds out with brinksmanship and says, I won't renew it unless you do what I want, loses. We're going to win this fight, and it's going to be a clean debt ceiling.
Finally, before...
And then most recently, on March 28, 2023, McCarthy goes on TV, and McCarthy goes, hey, the budget doesn't have anything to do with the debt ceiling at all. Play this clip.
The president did put that budget out, and I will grant you that we even had some Democrats on the show that said, okay, it's a starting point, and it's obviously it's clear that this will not be the final budget that could ever pass. But the critics say that you haven't put anything out. This is contained in the response from the White House press secretary. If the Republicans want to have a conversation about our nation's economic and fiscal future, it's time for them to put out a budget, as the president has done with his detailed plan to grow the economy, lower cost, and reduce the deficit by nearly $3 trillion. So Do you have something to present at this point, a budget, blueprint?
Look, let's be very honest about that. The budget doesn't have anything to do with the debt ceiling. I can pass a budget tomorrow, and we'll still need to pass a debt ceiling. A budget looks at tenure. These are apples and oranges. I sat down with the president in February before he produced his budget. They were more than a month delay, so it delays us in producing our budget. But that does nothing. I have $4 trillion in savings that I personally told the president why we sat only because it was St. Patrick's Day, on ways that we can find savings and come to the table.
So folks, you line up all of this data, and you know by watching the MeidasTouch network, we are very data based. So you see McCarthy calling out Scalise and Arrington. You see them calling out McCarthy. You see this complete and utter mess. And you see here the Democrats are just getting the work done. Here is our budget. Show me your budget, MAGA Republicans. Where do you want to cut the budget? Where do you want to cut spending here? You say you're not going to cut Social Security now after that was one of the things you wanted to cut. You claim you're not going to cut Medicare after that was the things you want to cut. Okay, so explain to us where it is that you're making cuts here. Because under the Biden budget plan, Biden has already reduced the deficit by $2 trillion, whereas Trump increased it by $7 trillion. That's just a fact. That's not debate. That's not hyperbole. That's just what's taken place. So Biden says, I'm going to be able to reduce the deficit further by trillions of dollars based on my budget. Show me your budget and how you get to those numbers. And what are the MAGA Republicans doing? What they blame each other. You got McCarthy saying it's Arrington's fault, and you've got, saying it's Scalise's fault, and just pointing fingers at each other. So what is ultimately going to happen as we get very close to where these extraordinary measures need to be taken this summer, and where the extraordinary measures that are being taken run out? What happens then? What'll end up happening is the Republicans are too incompetent to put forward a plan, and they're just going to try to hold the government hostage. McCarthy's going to scream at them. They're going to scream at McCarthy. And what they'll do is the Matt Gaetzes and all those people, they'll take a vote to oust McCarthy. They'll probably try to oust McCarthy this summer based on the fight over the raising of the debt ceiling while they don't propose anything. I think, unfortunately, there's going to probably be a short period of time where, I hate to say this, but based on where the MAGA Republicans are going, they're going to probably force America to default on its debt. And then within a few days, because the results are going to be so harmful, they're then going to come around to finally raising the debt ceiling after they cause this harm, which I'd love to avoid. But these MAGA Republicans are arsonists. They're destructive people. I think that's what'll happen. I think McCarthy will probably be ousted in the process. And I think it's just further going to reflect how completely deranged and incompetent the MAGA Republicans are. But this infighting in the MAGA Republican Party, I think, is even more serious than has been reported so far if you read between the lines. And I think I don't think Kevin McCarthy serves the full year. That's my prediction. We will see if that bears out. But I don't think he'll be able to get past this debt ceiling fight without a motion to vacate. But we'll see. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1,500,000 subscribers thanks to your support. So please hit subscribe. Also, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We just did one of our live sessions, answered many, many, many questions from all of you at home. It was great to meet all of you who joined our Patreon. Go there. You can join our next session. Also, wherever you get your audio podcast, just subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas. Thank you for watching.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.